Hello, everybody, and welcome to this live Facebook Zoom forum called Wolfsonian-FIU, Building on a 25-Year Legacy. My name is Daniel Ciraldo, and I'm the Executive Director at the Miami Design Preservation League. And I wanted to thank all of you for joining us for this really important talk. The Wolfsonian-FIU, for those who don't know, is a real cultural gem of South Beach and the Art Deco district. And a little trivia is that Mickey Wolfson, who was the founder, was actually on MDPL's very first board of directors in 1978. And so Mickey Wolfson, like Barbara Kappenman and Leonard Horowitz and other people that you've probably heard of these were real titans in the preservation story. Something really great about Mickey is that he started a museum, and so his story continues today in the Wolfsonian and all the great things that they do. And so we're very happy to have you all here tonight. If you are on Facebook or on Zoom, you could push the Q&A button on Zoom to ask a question, or on Facebook you can go in the chat and I will try to monitor that, and we will answer your questions at the very end. But first, I want to introduce Casey Steadman, who is the acting director of the Wolfsonian-FIU. He became acting director following the departure earlier this year of Tim Rogers, and he's provided key leadership since 2013 as the Deputy Director of Business Affairs. He heads the museum's management team and the entire staff, directs their strategy, and oversees the plans for expansion. And he has been a great partner to MDPL. We also have former Commissioner of Miami Beach, Joy Malakoff, who is now the chair of the Advisory Board of the Wolfsonian-FIU, and we thank her for joining. She'll be joining us a little later. I just finally wanted to mention that those of you who are voters in Miami Beach should know that there is a ballot question that would allow the Wolfsonian expansion to happen. Basically, in Miami Beach, voters have a say over any increases in density of a building. And so this is actually the first time that voters will get to weigh in ever in Miami Beach on expanding for arts and culture, for a cultural institution. There have been in the past, and even on this ballot, different expansions of private developments, but this is the very first arts and culture expansion, and we're very excited about that. MDPL's board of directors met and is in unanimous support of this FAR expansion project. And we encourage you all to vote yes on number 5 in Miami Beach. And we're hoping to also have, after this presentation, share this video. And so please feel free, if you have friends that are Miami Beach voters, to share this video with them to let them know about this expansion plan and hopefully get them to vote yes as well. So without further ado, I'll turn it over to Casey.
Thank you, Daniel. If you could give me access, I'll share my screen. While Daniel's enabling my screen sharing, there we are. I want to thank the Miami Design Preservation League, not only for this opportunity to talk about the Wolfsonian expansion, but also to recognize and thank the board of directors and MDPL for their endorsement. It's very much appreciated and very important to us so that we can realize the expansion of the Wolfsonian. One moment, let me get this share going. Here you are. So just a little bit more about the project. These plans incorporate, and the reason it's very important for us to talk to this audience, of a significant commitment to preservation. And as you'll see, we've put a lot of thought into how we can improve the site that we have there on Washington Avenue and enhance what we've done so well for so long, while really letting our historic building and the facades shine. Many of you know the Wolfsonian well, and I thank Daniel for his introduction and talking about the Wolfsonian. We have indeed partnered countless times over the years with MDPL, and we've been your partner, your neighbor here on the beach since 1995. In fact, 11/11/2020 will be our 25th anniversary of the Wolfsonian. Mickey thought it was important that it be founded on the Armistice Day. It was one of his interesting ways, we call them Mickeyisms, that he put into play. For those of you who don't know the Wolfsonian, we're an art design museum dedicated to the modern age. We have over 200,000 objects dating between 1850 and 1950, and we use those objects to tell stories. I'd like to set the stage a little bit by giving you a little background on how this project came to be. In 2004, the Miami-Dade County voters approved the Building Better Community Bond Fund. Included in that bond fund was $10 million to support the Wolfsonian's development of 25,000 square feet of new publicly accessible space. We now have developed these conceptual plans that I'm going to share with you that expand the Wolfsonian to the properties adjacent to our current Washington Avenue location or the historic Washington Storage Company building. We will be using the bond funds along with supplementing those with private donations, foundation gifts, and competitive grants. And in the next few months, we look forward to moving to the next stages, many stages actually, that will be necessary for us to realize these plans over the coming years. These wonderful images sort of give you sort of an idea of what happens and the things that we have going on at the museum. So I thought we'd talk a little bit about sort of what the Wolfsonian does and how we're engaged with the community before we start digging into the plans a little more deeply. We have, of course, the students participate from FIU, from the high schools. We have a wonderful opportunity to bring the public in for our programming. We also do modern art installations. You can, in the lower left-hand corner, many of you may recall the effort we made with Dutch designer Christy Vanderhoek for More is More. This is one example of the temporary installations that we do each year, usually tied to the Art Fair Week, that use the Washington Storage Company building as sort of a canvas for those artists. You're a group that's interested in historic preservation, so we couldn't go without, it would be remiss of us not to include some images. So here you see sort of a hovering over the ocean, looking back across Ocean Drive and Collins Avenue to the rear of the Washington Storage Company. This would have been sometime between 1927 and the 1930s, mid-1930s. The upper right-hand image on the right is, of course, 1927. Notice you can catch a glimpse of the windows along 10th Street. There used to be windows in the bay along that facade, and that's actually probably that is the only change that we would like to make to the historic building as we move forward with this expansion effort, other than the connections that might exist between the new addition along the north facade, which is actually a party wall. But we'd like to return these windows because I think they'll bring vibrancy and light back into the lobby. That area is currently our auditorium, but as you'll see later, we have new ideas about how we will provide an auditorium space and a program space. And then, of course, in the 1930s, the two more stories were added to the building. They were designed by Robert Little. And then, of course, later in the 1990s, Mickey worked with Mark Hampton to add the 6th and 7th floor, which finally realized our current building today. Many things on the building still exist today. The historic friezes. There was an effort many years ago, probably about 10 or 15 years ago, where all the friezes were restored on the building. I can say that in the coming months, we'll be going through a exterior renovation. Basically, what we all have to do here in South Florida with the elements that we deal with, where the stucco and the building will be being repainted. Of course, all consistent with what's currently there. There's no changes. It's just touching up the cracks and making sure that the building's nice and tight and ready for the next 25 years or more. Also, a new roof will be put onto the building. And finally, with this work, we will be removing the hurricane shutters on the 6th and 7th floor and replacing those windows with impact windows. So we're very excited about what's going to be happening in the coming months with the Washington Storage Company building. We also, for those of you who have had to endure our famously slow elevator, the entire elevator will be refurbished. It will still look the same when you step into it, but all the equipment and everything, all the mechanical systems will be being replaced over the coming months also. So quite a bit of investment going on to make sure that we're, as I said, ready for the next 25 years and more for the Washington Storage Company building. Looking into the interior, this was the Washington Storage in its heyday. Many of you, some of you may have been here on the beach long enough to remember when it was a very seasonal crowd, and when furnishings and fixtures were packed up at the end of the season and shipped off to the storage company until the following winter when the visitors returned. Obviously, we were packing furniture, rugs, automobiles. As you can see, I believe this is the 4th floor of the building where automobile storage was. The ground floor front desk as visitors came in. Most of these elements in the lobby you still see today. They're still there. And actually what is currently now against that very back wall is the Norris Theater fountain facade. And those 2 doors on the right are where you enter into our elevator lobby. For those that have visited the 2nd floor of the building, you've seen the safe doors. They're still there, from the York Safe and Lock Company, and they each have their identifying titles on for what was the contents of each of those rooms. So we're very pleased that we have this wonderful historic piece that we can build upon and we can expand upon. The Wolfsonian was really created as a center for learning. As many of you know, our founder Mickey Wolfson, who established the institution, he really wanted it to be a place that was irreverent, to question and to see the unexpected, to tackle challenging ideas. So we really try to instill in everything we do Mickey's philosophy of this sort of opportunity to learn and to discover new things and unique things in the collections. Speaking of the collections, that's really the basis of everything we do. Mickey set the tone by collecting everything from paintings to sculpture, which you would traditionally find in a museum, to early telephones, vintage postcards, and propaganda. We've had many donors since that have given us some really incredible objects that have been built upon this foundation that Mickey put in place for us for the collections. Almost anything that was produced from the 1850s to the 1950s, you're probably going to find some example of in our collections. Which is a really wonderful thing to have as we begin to develop and put together our wonderful exhibitions and installations. We follow a very thematic approach when we develop our interpretive exhibits. We cross across all mediums. So a collection we may have, you may find a kitchen stove and a wonderful oil painting and a wonderful sculpture all in the same exhibit. Because we think it's important when we're presenting our exhibits to represent all the mediums and the cultures so that visitors really have an opportunity to understand sort of the seismic changes that the world experienced during the time period that we cover. We also make connections today. As I mentioned earlier, we typically do contemporary art installations tied to the Art Fair Week. We've had personalities such as Stefan Sagmeister, Isabella Rossellini, Ezra Wabe, Christy Vanderhoek, as I mentioned earlier, all who have done installations in our building. So what we hope to do with our visitors and our guests is to allow them to make discoveries and sort of connect the dots between life yesterday and life today. Our work is grounded in scholarship since the beginning. Mickey, of course, started the Journal of Decorative and Propaganda Arts in 1986. The Wolfsonian also benefits from many multiple-year research grants. We have a fellowship program that brings outside experts and scholars to explore our collections. We also have an exciting new chapter in research efforts, the Wolfsonian Public Humanities Lab, which is an FIU multidisciplinary hub for the humanities that brings together the often siloed worlds of academia, the civic world, and public life to explore the humanities. You'll be seeing a lot more from about WPHL, their programming and their efforts in working with the Wolfsonian and actually all of the museums of FIU, including our neighbor, the Jewish Museum of Florida, which is a little further down Washington Avenue. We engage our audiences in a lot of variety of ways, whether it be parties, guest talks and tours, curator-led experiences, or behind-the-scenes opportunities. We definitely have a full range of programming, ranging from serious to silly, but all of it is about discovery and learning more from our collections. And again, going back to that opportunity for individuals to sort of connect the dots and really find out about the history and how it connects to today. We've also been very fortunate to have a lot of partners over the years that have helped us accomplish all the things with our collections and our programs. And they've been an immense help to everything we do. This includes the Knight Foundation, which has generously supported our digitization efforts, which increases the accessibility of our collections. The City of Miami Beach with its Cultural Anchors program and other support to really help us realize and deliver the programs that we want to the community. And then also the Miami-Dade County Department of Cultural Affairs, who also, like the city, provides very generous support to make sure we can accomplish all that we want to with our programming and our content. Critical to everything we do is preparing the next generation. We want to be sure that we're providing an impact and a role for all the rising thinkers that are out there. We host a series of free family days each year. We produce gallery guides with kid-friendly activities. We have classroom visits throughout Miami-Dade County. Of course, currently that's a little different given the conditions that we're in, but typically we would be reaching out and visiting those classrooms and inviting them to tour through the museum. We also engage students in our STEAM curriculum. This past year, we worked with the City of Miami Beach and presented STEAM course curriculum to 4 classrooms at Nautilus. This year, we'll be doing the same. We have 4 classrooms at Fisher-Feinberg Elementary and 4 classrooms at Treasure Island Elementary. We also have a teen program called Zines for Progress, which students from Miami Beach Senior High generally participate in each year. And of course, this year, given the unique conditions and the challenges we face for the school system and all of us really, the Knight Foundation has provided us support to virtualize all of the content for our Zines for Progress and our STEAM program. So that means not all these programs will be accessible to all the students and the classrooms as planned, but it also means in the future we'll be able to expand the reach of our programs beyond sort of the geography of South Florida, we hope, for others to participate and learn from the collection. So now we move into the expansion plans. What I'm about to share with you are conceptual plans. So the exact design will probably change. We will have to engage in a comprehensive design project once we move through all the proper approvals. So that will probably be something that we engage in early, perhaps early 2021. But some things in these conceptual designs will not change. One being the size and scale. We think it's important and we recognize that it's important to the community that we preserve the pedestrian feel of Washington Avenue. So like many other projects along the avenue, we'll be pushing the mass of the building to the rear of the lot, so that we continue that 1-story level, that very human scale experience that you can have along the avenue. Very much in contrast to our existing fortress-like presence with the storage company. We also will be very cognizant of the preservation. We are committed to retaining the facades of the buildings to the north, so those will be retained. We think in this design, they provide a nice sort of demarcation point between the street and this sort of public courtyard, but knowing that those designs may change and evolve over time. Certainly, as we move through that design process, we will be inviting the community for their participation, for their input, because we really want the Wolfsonian and what we do going forward to be real responsive and engaged with the community. Starting at the new entrance, many find our current entrance a bit foreboding and unwelcoming. It does have a bit of a fortress appeal to it. We've been called a bank, an embassy, government buildings. Sometimes this comes to mind for individuals. It's the nature of the building. We were a storage company. We're there to preserve and protect. The original building was considered burglar-proof, fireproof, and storm-proof. So that explains why it looks as it does. With the new addition, we have the opportunity to design a new entry that better integrates to the sort of street life in the community and feels more welcoming to all, so that we have a sort of different tone and a feeling to how you approach the building. Of course, this will all be connected into our historic building. And as I said, we'll be preserving the fabric of the interior of the historic building pretty much as is. We think that Mickey and Mark Hampton did a wonderful job. And we also feel that the content there will be, the sort of fabric and design there will also be included in the addition. And you'll see that in a moment in some slides I will share. So stepping back, looking at the new addition, you'll notice this wonderful double height glazed level on the second level. This is a 2-story gallery space. So therefore, as you're going by the museum, whether you're on Washington Avenue, you'll sort of have these vistas into the museum. So of course, it will feel more welcoming, that there will be this opportunity to draw visitors to the museum and to help them understand what goes on inside our building. We, of course, want to make sure that we respect and preserve the historic structure. Certainly, you see it here on the right, the Washington Storage Company. As I said, the connectivity would be along what is actually a party wall to the north. We certainly will be incorporating resiliency features into the new addition. They will benefit the historic building as well as the new addition, and we think will contribute overall to the wellness of the community and also sustain us for the future. I will say, Mickey likes to joke that by saying nature I admire but avoid, but we will sort of temper his comments, because we think it's very important that we need to incorporate a little nature into our new buildings as we think about resiliency and sustainability for the future. It's just unavoidable. Now we can move into the building. You'll notice, as I said earlier, the architectural elements that Mark Hampton incorporated into the historic building. We want to carry that theme into this building. We want to sort of echo that experience. So we'll be able to take wonderful pieces from our collection and really incorporate them as true fixtures, working fixtures. Some of you may recognize these chandeliers or light fixtures. They're currently a number of them in our auditorium space. Unfortunately, they're not currently lamped. The style of lighting or lamps that were made for them are no longer available, so we're going to have to work with a custom company to have those designed. But we would like to return those into the space and light up those chandeliers again, and they will be part of the functional space as well as something really wonderful to look at from the collection. You see some wonderful murals here. These are larger than life pieces that in many instances we've not displayed. They've just been too large to fit into our spaces. This gives you a better idea of that great hall space. This is the space behind those glazed windows. Again, the objects here are actually objects to scale from our collection. The Dutch chandeliers you might have recognized from the modern Dutch design that was installed a few years ago. If you visited before we had to close in March, the Universe of Things, you got an impression of sort of the experience of Washington Storage Company before Mickey created the Wolfsonian, where the collection items were stored on the shelving and the racking throughout the building. So these shelving units would be sort of a nod to that past. Here again, many large items. The Prussian stove in the middle has never been assembled. It's still in its crate from when it was shipped here to South Florida and received. So we're going to be very excited to really bring these items forward for everyone to see and to enjoy. The other wonderful thing about the Great Hall space, I mentioned that we would be forfeiting the auditorium in the main building. And now we can create this wonderful gathering space where we can host programming such as guest talks, films, lectures, any other sorts of events in the Great Hall space. So those floating islands of collection would be pushed to the side, and we create this large open space where you would interact and be surrounded by the collections while listening to wonderful programming, lectures, or other events. It's sort of a sustainability issue. It's better than having an auditorium that spends most of its time empty and unused. This way, during the day, visitors will experience the exhibitions, and then when we need it, we can transform it into this wonderful program space. We also see an opportunity with the expansion to create some wonderful experiential learning spaces. This will give an opportunity for all learners to sort of explore and study our collections. By all learners, I mean our K through 12 audience, our higher education audience working with FIU or Miami-Dade College or any other institution of higher learning, or those of you in the community that are just lifelong learners and want to engage and learn more about the collections at the Wolfsonian. Again, this opportunity is thanks to the generous support of the Knight Foundation because it's very much tied to our digital efforts. At the rear of this image, you see what is basically digital studio space. We currently have a small digital studio and an on-staff photographer. I think he's going to be very excited about the opportunity to have a more structured space for his work. We also are exploring the opportunity to create a similar space that's more oriented for works on paper and our library collections to continue the efforts that we have there to digitize those collections as we go forward. So that is actually my presentation. This is the longest time that I had to get the presentation, so I'm very appreciative of that. I hope that this gives everyone a glimpse of the future and sort of what the possibilities are ahead for us. As I said, we want to bring the community in as we begin the design process later in 2021. So at this point, I was going to recognize Joy Malakoff, who is, of course, our Wolfsonian Advisory Board Chair, to let her share some of her thoughts about the project and about the future. Joy?
Yes. Hi, everybody. I'm so happy to be here with the Miami Design Preservation League. Casey's told you all about the exciting planned expansion of the Wolfsonian. What I'm doing as the chairman of the advisory board of the museum is asking you to vote. Vote yes on the 5th referendum. There are 6 Miami Beach referendum questions on the ballot. It's a long ballot, so don't miss the 3rd page. And please do vote on item number 242. Besides chairing this advisory board, I was a Charter Historic Preservation Board member, a former chairman of the planning board for the city of Miami Beach. And many of you may remember I was a commissioner back 6 years ago. And it's important to me, and I think to the city, to move this vision of the Wolfsonian-FIU forward. It is one of Miami Beach's cultural partners, and Casey mentioned this year we have even more classrooms that will be taken care of in their STEAM program, where students will come to the Wolfsonian. Art and culture are key to our city's cultural tourism, as well as one of the reasons we all love living in Miami Beach. As residents, we're going to have new public spaces, a welcoming entrance, a green courtyard, and a new gathering and major exhibit space in the Great Hall. It'll be much more neighborly, inviting, modern, with content available to the public that's never been seen before. Mickey's been collecting for many, many, many years, and the breadth and depth of his collection has never been seen by any of us. But this will enable us to see a lot more of the collection. There'll be more exhibits for the public, and as well as more classes for the STEAM children. The new construction will be set back from Washington Avenue. It'll only be about 50 feet in height. It's not a tower or anything like it. It's going to fit into the Washington Avenue streetscape, set back from the street. And although 75 feet is what's allowed under the regulations, it'll be lower than that. And it will be just beautiful. So again, I ask you to vote yes on number 242, 5th referendum for Miami Beach for the Wolfsonian. Thank you so much, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you so much, Casey and Joy. It's an amazing project, and I think it's so great that we're spreading the word about it because, obviously the Wolfsonian as a cultural institution might not have the funding to have a lot of advertisements on radio and TV, and so if you like this and you're watching, I would urge you to please let your friends know, let your family know. People have called me up and said, "Oh, what are your thoughts on this question?" And of course I say, yes, yes, yes. But we need to make sure enough people know because it is a very important ballot with a presidential election. And I don't even know how many pages the ballot is, but it's pretty long. And so hopefully this gave a good summary for the people watching. And now we're going to go look at the questions. And if you haven't yet asked a question, feel free to type it in the Q&A chat. I see the first one I see is Jeff Gold. Great question. How does climate change figure into the program planning for the expansion?
So climate change certainly will have to be everything in the planning. FIU is committed to sustainability and resiliency. Of course, there's the Sea Level Rise Institute that FIU works with. Certainly we'll have that as a resource available to us. We can think of many different things that we can do to contribute to the wellness in the community and resiliency and sustainability, whether it's stormwater management, so that we're not putting it into the stormwater systems, that we're trying to retain it on our site, making sure that our critical systems are not within flooding areas, such as our generator and things of that nature. We can also look at energy efficiency to the extent we have some pretty large roof areas, so there might be opportunities for solar panels, other things of that nature, so that we're not putting such a demand on the power capacity of FPL, so that we could help with that. There's many opportunities inside the building for water efficiency and management. Certainly, while we'd like to create sort of these open green spaces, we want to be cognizant of the use of water in those spaces and be thoughtful with that. And then just looking at the general building design, of course, we will make sure that it has to sustain for the climate that we're in, but making sure that the materials, that you can do things such as making sure the materials and the way they're produced are sustainable and not detrimental to the environment. FIU typically does pursue a LEED status with their buildings, so that will certainly be incorporated into the process. That will be, these discussions will be what we'll be doing once we get past the next couple of months and all the various approvals. This will be the exercise that we'll engage in with the community, perhaps with design charrettes, general input, but of course, once we select our architectural design firm, then they will have that information. So we want to look for all the opportunities, not only for the addition, but also to think about our existing historic building. One thing I didn't mention is the mechanical areas that we plan to build in this addition, we want to make large enough for any future needs of the historic building. So if we need to replace building systems, chilled water towers, things of that nature, we'll have the capacity to do that. So it's a little bit of future proofing for the building.
That sounds great. Okay, we do have another question. Someone that has a collection of art, David Jarrett, who was wondering, in general, do you accept art, or and what period is your focus?
Sure. So we do try to stay within the 1850s to 1950s. There's a few occasions where we do extend beyond that. Probably one of the most notable collections is one of our trustees, Henry Hacker, donated a collection of AIDS posters, AIDS awareness posters, that we accepted a few years ago. And actually, as part of a small exhibition that we intend to present virtually and also in the building as we sort of prepare to reopen in probably the next few weeks. And I can speak about that a little bit more. But in general, the way collections come to a museum, and this is true of pretty much any museum, you would want to reach out and contact us, and we would connect you with a curator. And that curator would then meet with you, assess your collection, determine if it was appropriate for us, and it was something that we would like to acquire or have donated. If it's not something that's appropriate for us, our curators can offer suggestions of perhaps other collections that might be interested in the pieces. We certainly, as a museum, always encourage as much as possible. If individuals have art and collections that they think are important, we want to bring them back into the public domain so that we can make them accessible to others and they can enjoy them. So I would encourage, I think it's David Jarrett, I would encourage him to reach out to us. You can, my information is readily available, or you can call the Wolfsonian, and we can help you out with if there's an interest. If not, we'll try to direct you to somebody that does have an interest.
Sounds great. Okay, so we have a new question. Annika Saville, how much space will be devoted to collection as opposed to programs? And she said, well, most space goes to collection.
So we're going to create 50,000 square feet of collections and exhibition space. How it will be allocated out and used by the community and how we will use it for displays is still a little bit up in the air. That will be that exercise that we move into in 2021. Certainly we see the opportunity with the double height gallery, the Great Hall, to really bring out some of the collections that have never been seen before. So we think that area will be almost exclusively collections and then be transformed into a program space. I didn't mention, but there is a third level to the expansion. We didn't present images of it because we don't have programming ideas for that space yet. Again, like the mechanical area, we're trying to future-proof. We want to make sure that we're there for the long term. So there's another almost 9,000 square feet of double height gallery exhibition programmatic space that, as we identify programs and funding, will begin to populate that space also. So we have a wonderful opportunity to keep building upon the exhibitions. As our collections grow, I will say we are very fortunate to have a number of donors who are like Mickey, who collected similarly to Mickey, that have been offering their collections to us. So we're always happy to have those come along. When I started with the Wolfsonian in 2013, Mickey made a large gift of 25,000 more objects. So we went from 150,000 objects to almost 180,000 objects with one signature one day on June 30th, 2013. And since then, we've added another 20,000. So you can understand our collections sort of have a tendency to grow in big lump sums, but they also trickle in along the way.
That's amazing. Yeah, and for those who have not been to the Wolfsonian, it's a real treasure on Miami Beach. I had the great privilege to visit the Wolfsoniana in Genoa a couple summers ago, and I also was able to spend the day with Mickey and with Silvia Barizione, and even visited the Castle Mackenzie, which is just an amazing piece of architecture that Mickey has been steward of for a very long time. So it's just such an important institution. I wanted to ask, possibly Joy would be the best to answer this, is how important is this vote? And if you could talk about the allocation of the county and sort of how that expires, why is it important that people vote yes on November 3rd?
Thank you very much, Daniel, for mentioning it. Yes, in the Dade County had a bond to improve the whole county many years ago, and the bond expires very shortly. So they allocated $10 million to the Wolfsonian, and we need to use it. So it's very important that this referendum is passed now, this November 3rd, because otherwise we could lose the $10 million. That's a lot of money for this expansion. And we look forward to getting a yes vote and moving forward with expanding the Wolfsonian. By the way, my grandparents have lived in Miami Beach since the late 1920s, and they were snowbirds that come here and go back north for the winter to Chicago, and then, well, mainly to Chicago. And they would store their rugs, their carpets at the Washington storage every summer when they'd go north.
Oh, that's amazing. Yeah, I mean, it's a very unique building on that street, and it was interesting, Casey, to see your slides of the different lives of the building, including it's sort of it has been added onto, and seeing the windows, those small openings. And did you say, Casey, that you were considering reintroducing those?
Yeah, so on the 10th Street facade, there's in the bays, there was large bays of windows, and they were there at the 1927 building when it was completed. At some point, probably I think by the 30s, those bays were filled in. So we want to reopen those bays. Of course, it'd be, we'll work with the Historic Preservation Board, the Design Review Board, as to what would be appropriate in placing back into those spaces. As this entire project will have to follow the normal due course of any project on Miami Beach, particularly in the historic district. So that will be something in our future also once we begin working with these designs.
No, that's great. And I think it'll add a new element of views as well from the building, because, you're sort of up higher looking over Washington Avenue. And so I'm really excited to see eventually the new vantage points that you'll get. And I see another question from David. How many feet on Washington Avenue heading north will the new addition be?
Sure. So the Washington Storage Company, the properties are 250 feet from 10th Street north along Washington Avenue on the east side. The historic Washington Storage Company building is the first 100 feet. Our design store and coffee bar is the next 50. And then the next two lots are 100 feet of street frontage. So we would be expanding the building over top of the design store. We don't intend to make changes to that structure or space. And then into those 100 foot of lots to the north.
Great. And Linda Kolka, one of our awesome members, asks what resort is behind you. And I bet a lot of our listeners and viewers will know, but Casey, can you let us know?
Sure, that is the Cabana Club at the Rooney Plaza. And I think Joy might be able to share even more stories about the Rooney Plaza that we learned about earlier.
Yes, Joy, can you share your story about the Rooney?
My parents had a cabana at the Cabana Club next door, which was just to the south of the Rooney Plaza. And the girlfriend and I would sneak over into the Rooney Plaza because we were not members. And we would go in, and I preserved some photos that were taken when we were at the Rooney Plaza with this young lady and myself, and hers. She has passed away, but I gave photos to her sons who live on Miami Beach, and they love the pictures of the old Rooney Plaza. We were just sort of viewing what was going on. We didn't swim there, but they had like covered wagons with fabric around seats. And so a couple of the pictures were us sitting in those wagons looking out.
That's great. Well,
it was a gorgeous.
No, I mean, even the fact that you were able to experience it, I've only seen it in postcards. Unfortunately, it was knocked down, I believe, around 1968. And that was before the preservation movement really took off. But I know that's still a loss that stings with a lot of us because it was such a beautiful building.
It was gorgeous. It was pink and white and gorgeous.
Yeah, but the good news is that the Freedom Tower and the Biltmore,
right,
in Coral Gables are still extant, and they were designed by the same architects, Schultz and Weaver. And at the Wolfsonian,
similarity.
Right, that Alhambra-esque tower in the corner. And at the Wolfsonian, they have an amazing, is it a mural, Casey?
It's actually a painting. It's a compilation of all of the Schultz and Weaver buildings, New York, Miami Beach. It's a wonderful piece that sort of represents them all to scale. I was looking to see, it's available actually on our website. So if you visit wolfsonian.org and go to what's online, digital experiences, we have a whole series of Zoom backgrounds. So any of you that would like to have this as your Zoom background or other items from our collection. You can find them there. They're already formatted for Zooms or Teams. They'll work for either, and I'm assuming all the new platforms that are popping up out there too. I was just going to quickly see. No, I don't have it downloaded here, but yeah, you can grab it there and enjoy it. And of course, I won't say that you can see it now, or you'll be able to see it in the near future, because our reopening plans are because of the nature of our building. It has a unique bottleneck of the elevator and the stairs to get to our collections. So we're going to be doing something a little bit different as we plan to reopen in the coming weeks.
Well, I know we're all very excited to see you reopen and safely. And I hope this presentation has given all of our viewers a lot of inspiration and you know, something to look forward to when things are back to normal. And also with the mayor and the commission's whole effort about revitalizing the district and making arts and culture a focus, this seems like a perfect time for Wolfsonian to really expand and to be able to see more of Mickey's collection. Just sounds like a win-win. Plus those community spaces and program spaces. I think if you want to think about these FAR increases as, you know, the voters have the say, but a lot of voters want there to be a real public benefit. And I think what's great about this is it's clear that we will have this public benefit. And also because, is it correct, Casey, that because there would be county funds that the Wolfsonian would essentially be committing for the next 25 years to maintain the space here in Miami Beach?
Yes, of course, the county, to access and utilize the funds, there will be a requirement from the county of 25 years at a minimum, but our intentions are for the long haul. We have no plans to move the Wolfsonian. You know, this is a pretty significant investment. Our operations as a whole are all here on Miami Beach. Our collection storage, the museum, our staff, our programming, we do it all here on Miami Beach. And so that commitment stays, that we want to be here and to be here for the long term.
And that's great because, you know, unfortunately, we've seen the departure of some cultural institutions over to the mainland. And it's not easy operating in Miami Beach. We have a lot of unique challenges, but to know that Wolfsonian is committed and is going to be expanding if this goes through is exciting. So I see we do have another question from Anika. She said, I hope you succeed. It's my favorite museum. And do local business support the plan?
Yeah, so we have the support. We've talked to the Washington Avenue Business Improvement District, which was a newly formed group, which we participate in, and we've had their support. Lincoln Road Business Improvement District. Of course, the Ocean Drive or South Beach Business Improvement District hasn't quite yet formed, but they have expressed their support for our efforts. And of course, we are making sure that we engage and work with all of our neighbors along Washington Avenue. You know, all ships rise on a rising tide, so we want to be part of contributing to that transformation, not only of Washington Avenue, but you know, the MXC as a whole. You mentioned the mayor and the commission's interest in growing arts and culture in the community and making it more important to the community, not just for our citizens, but also for our visitors. So we really want to be a part of that and be an anchor and continue that, I guess, our status as an anchor in those efforts.
That's great. And for those who would like to read more about the plan, can you let us know where, you know,
Sure.
Share it with our friends and family?
Sure. You can visit Wolfsonian.org, and there is a tab at the top called Expansion. Most of my slides came from that area, from that page. We'll be adding more information there as it develops, and certainly, you know, later on in the process, as we begin true design efforts and everything, we'll be developing and creating web pages. We also, it wasn't ready in time for this meeting. We do have a team that's creating a wonderful sort of video fly through of the spaces, so we'll have something a little more dramatic in the coming weeks that individuals can share. They should feel free to share that link with any of their friends to see more about the project. And that link will probably be evergreen. That'll be where we'll continue to develop more content and more information about the project.
Sounds wonderful. Well, I wanted to thank again our panelists today, Casey Steadman and Joy Malakoff. We're going to give you all a virtual round of applause. And best of luck to you, and thank you for all that you're doing for arts and culture in Miami Beach.
Well, thank you, Daniel, and thank you to all the members of MDPL and those participating in the program.
Thank you all. And for those who
Thank you very much. It's our pleasure.
Thank you, Joy. And for those who are leaving the meeting, you'll see a survey to take at the end. And if you wouldn't mind filling that out, let us know how we did. And until next time, have a great evening. Bye-bye.